Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. My name is Kang Chen, and I'm the founder and CEO of AIM Consulting. In terms of this presentation and what we'll be covering and accomplishing, first and foremost, I'm going to talk a bit about who we are, what we do, and why we're definitely different than any other channel partner you'll partner with. From there, we're going to talk about monthly recurring revenue, the challenges that every Vietnamese company faces when it comes to acquiring revenues, and more importantly, how we're able to solve these challenges with our services. From there, we're going to talk a bit about what we need from your company in terms of working together and the partnership process. And lastly, I'm going to give you some free advice for how I would use AIM services to maximize your end-of-year revenues. Here we have a younger, more handsome picture of me. I won't go through and read my entire background. However, what's important to know is I've been here for a long time, 12 years, and I've been fortunate to build some very large companies. Namely, I was the founding head of sales for Lazada Vietnam and the founding CEO for Intrepid Group Asia. I come from a long background in technology, specifically e-commerce enablement, emerging technologies, and enterprise technologies. Our core service at AIM Consulting is enabling automated monthly recurring revenue, or MRR, through channel sales partnerships. Through monthly recurring revenue, we enable you to expand your footprint here in Vietnam, reach and sell to more customers, and remove the major obstacles that your customers face as they're going through digital transformation and consider investing in your software. Once we establish the foundation for our key partners, we'll then work with these key partners to help them expand globally and specifically to the United States. Generally, business is hard. However, business in Vietnam is exponentially more difficult, especially when it comes to how we collect money. This hits software companies worse than most companies because in Vietnam, we're not able to sell software the way the rest of the world does due to Vietnamese banking regulations. Banking regulations prevent us from being able to collect automated monthly recurring revenue, which makes it much more difficult to build and scale software companies. Since we can't collect money this way, there's a handful of ways that we do collect revenues. Firstly, we go through and allow our customers to sign annual contracts but pay monthly. This is challenging because most customers don't actively use the software they've purchased. So, they come on board, pay for 1 month, and since they really haven't used the software in their first month, they've refused to pay the second payment. In the end, your sales team or customer success team contacts them, they refuse to pay for the next month's services, and you end up having a very high customer churn. Secondly, some companies might close monthly contracts and allow their customers to pay monthly. This is exactly what the customers want. The problem yet again is that these customers are not actively using their software, which means that since they aren't using the software, they refuse to renew in the second month. Then, your customer support team or sales team chases them, and you end up having a very high churn rate. Thirdly, in Vietnam, we can use app stores to collect automatic recurring payment. But when you use either the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, they force you to pay a 30% margin, and that is an incredibly high margin. We have the option to collect digital payment through OTP. So let's say you sign an annual contract and set up the monthly calendar to automatically send push notifications for OTP. The problem with this is that when the customer receives the OTP, they look at their phone and think, what is this? Oh, that software I don't want to use, and I don't want to pay for it. They refuse to input the OTP, and you have a high customer churn. Lastly, we have upfront payment, which is what 99.999% of every Vietnamese company is doing here in Vietnam. They close an annual contract and force the customer to pay the annual fee up front. On one hand, this is great because your company takes minimal risk, there's no customer churn, and in theory, you have 12 times more cash revenue coming in. But the reality is that we're asking these customers who are going through digital transformation for the first time, who don't use software at a high level, and probably have never used your software before, to commit to an annual payment up front, which is an incredibly difficult ask. To take it further, some companies not only ask for annual payment, but are asking for multiple subscriptions. Companies like Beatrix force their customers to buy 50 licenses up front. No customer wants to do this. So that means that while it's great on one hand if you can get the customer to pay, on the other hand, the vast majority of these customers do not want to commit to an annual payment, So you have a very low conversion rate of closing customers, and at the end of the day, this is just bad, and it's a bad business model, and we're the only ones doing it. Let's visualize this in a different way. Here we have an iceberg. Icebergs are unique because 10% of the mass is above the water, but 90% is below the water. In this presentation, I'm going to go through and use a specific use case. It's a real company with real numbers. Unfortunately, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but these numbers are real. This company collects 15,000 marketing qualified leads every single month, of which 10,000 are sales qualified leads, meaning real names and real numbers. And they get 4,000 hot leads a month, or 4,000 requests to upgrade from free to paid subscriptions. You would probably cut your right arm off to get any of that. And let's be real, those numbers are great. What's not great is that these leads are all those customers who do not want to pay for annual fees up front. So they only convert 400 of these leads to paying customers per month. That conversion rate is god-awful. They close 400 out of 10,000 sales qualified leads per month. Specific to this use case, their average contract value is 500,000 V&D per monthly subscription, which equates to 200 million V&D revenue per month and 2.4 billion cash revenue V&D per month. If they could close just 5% more, they would more than double their revenue to 5.4 billion, but they can't. Essentially, what they're doing is this. They've got 15,000 rocks on the ground. Underneath these 15,000 rocks are 400 buried diamonds. Now, they don't know which rock has a diamond buried underneath it, so they have to quickly turn these rocks over every single month to figure out which one has a buried diamond. Does this one have it? No. This one? No. They continue to turn these rocks over as quickly as possible, trying to figure out in this entire 15,000 where the 400 diamonds are located. Or in other words, in this entire 15,000 lead iceberg, they have to find the 400 customers who are willing to pay for software they've never used before because they're bought into the idea that it might help their businesses. That's tough. But as tough as it is in terms of chasing revenue, what makes it worse is how much money they're wasting in the process. Let's assume one lead costs $25,000 down. Because of this horrible conversion rate, the CPL jumps up from $25,000 down up to 1 million V&D. It's maddening and not how software is intended to be sold. This is how software is intended to be sold. Every single software company in the world sells software through automated monthly recurring revenue, but not here in Vietnam. They go through and set up a free to paid automatic monthly payment business model. They do this for a number of reasons, namely because it exponentially drives up revenue and decreases costs. It's the healthiest, safest, and most stable way to grow your revenue. Every CEO's job is to increase revenue and decrease OPEX. This model does both. There are a number of benefits of converting your business into this model. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through and read this entire slide to you. However, the most important takeaway from this entire slide is automatic monthly recurring revenue allows your company to dramatically increase its revenue and decrease its costs. Let's look at what this means in terms of your revenue and what it means to you. As I said before, I'm going to use a specific use case which starts with 2.4 billion cash revenue. Within 12 months, you could grow your revenue 23 billion in 1 month. How is that possible? When we're looking at this table, understand that this is not what's going to happen with your business. It's based on a number of assumptions. The point of this slide is to be able to show you how the revenue compounds. Again, using the same use case, 400 customers per month and 500 V&D monthly subscription fee. In terms of churn rates, there's no good data for churn rate from month 0 to month 1 or month 1 to month 2. But I'm assuming the worst case here. I'm assuming 30% churn in month 0 to month 1. Why? Because there's probably a lot of people who will subscribe, look at the software, and immediately cancel. I'm then assuming a 20% churn rate from month 1 to month 2. This is because there will likely be a lot of people who forget to cancel in month 1, get hit with the fee, and immediately cancel. But in month 3, there's minimal churn. The average churn rate for B2B software products is between 4 and 8%. This is because either 1, they love your software and use it every single day, or 2, They don't care how much they're spending for it. The way we read this table is in the red, we have business as usual, the 2.4 billion month over month. At the very top, we have how the revenue will grow. The major assumption here is that you want to come flat with cash revenue within 3 months. So, in this case, 9.6 billion VND. By the second month, you go from 2.4 billion to 3.1 billion and you're making more money. By the end of the year, you're making 23 billion a month. You have increased your annual cash revenue by over 360%, from 31 billion to 145 billion. This is exactly why software companies all across the world use an automatic monthly recurring revenue model. Is this realistic? Probably not. This is more realistic. Instead of 3 months to come flat, we're looking at 6 months. But even in this case, you're going from 31.2 billion of annual cash revenue to 72.5 billion, which is a 133% increase. I know what you're thinking. Kang, this sounds great, but we can't do this in Vietnam. Well, yes and no. You're right, no, you cannot collect revenue in this way in Vietnam. But I'm not Vietnamese, I'm an American. And in America, you can collect automated monthly recurring revenue. So I launched AIM Consulting US so I can specifically support you. Here's how I'm able to do it. I'm able to go through and do a channel sales partnership agreement between AIM US and Vietnamese software providers like you, where you authorize AIM Consulting US to distribute your software. I also launched AIM Vietnam. In the future, AIM US and AIM Vietnam will be under a group umbrella. However, legally speaking, I haven't created the group yet. Therefore, AIM US and AIM Vietnam are under an affiliate partnership. You will work directly with AIM Vietnam for partner acquisition, onboarding onto the AIM platform, and supporting you with CAM, or Channel Account Management, to execute commercial strategies and manage your company through the AIM platform. What essentially happens is, since you've authorized AIM to distribute your software, AIM transacts the sale of the software to the Vietnamese end users. When the customer, here in Vietnam, wants to go through and pay for the software, instead of doing a bank transfer, they're using the AIM payment links. They pay 100% of the monthly fee to AIM US, AIM takes a small commission, and we reconcile the balance back to you. Nothing really changes in your day-to-day operations for the most part. Your sales team or your customer support team will get verbal agreements and close your customers. The major difference is they don't send your bank information when they're closing. They send over the AIM payment link instead. That payment link will have certain information they'll need to go through and put in, ultimately accepting our terms and conditions. In our terms and conditions, the customer will accept the automatic payment and specific terms of the End User License Agreement, or EULA, for both AIM and our partners. The customers will start on a free trial subscription, but will automatically transition to a paid subscription after the trial period, and their credit or debit cards will automatically be charged. We're going to provide real-time reporting to you. This allows you to know when customers go through and complete a sign-up, when they do an upgrade or downgrade, if they do a cancellation, or if they want more licenses. You will have access to this information in real time. The customers will continue to renew every single month unless one of two things happens. Number one, the subscription term of the license expires, or two, it will terminate if when the customer chooses to cancel their subscription. The customers will go through a very specific process, and we're going to go through this step by step. Firstly, as I said before, when your customer support team or sales team closes a verbal commitment, they're going to send the AIM payment link. Therefore, AIM will support you in creating payment links for every single product you sell. So for example, let's say Basic, Standard, and Enterprise. When AIM creates payment links, we'll set the commercial terms of each payment link per your commercial strategy. So for example, price, trial period, etc. From there, your team will send over that payment link to the customer. Once the customer receives it, they're obviously going to click on it. This is what the customer will see once they access the payment link. Understand that there are a lot of commercial decisions that need to be made for each payment link. These are 100% up to you. How long do you want the trial period to be? Do you want to use discount codes? Again, 100% up to you. So in this case, a 14-day trial period. We could have 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, whatever you feel is the best interest for your company. Discount codes, again, are up to you if you want to use them or not. Some companies will have standard discounts, so in the end of the month, they'll do 30% off, 50% off to drive end-of-month closure. We'll create these standard discount codes up front. Then monthly, we'll go through and support you to update if there's any changes that you need to be made or create any new discount codes. Taxes and fees. AIM US is subject to US taxes and payment fees for Stripe. When the customer signs for the trial subscription, they're going to be accepting the terms and conditions. In so doing, they're accepting the automatic monthly payment, and they're accepting that they bear the cost for additional taxes and fees. Unfortunately, because the customers aren't located in the US, tax will not automatically update based on zip code. Therefore, we need to increase the selling price to include these taxes and fees into the selling price, so the price will be all-inclusive. After taxes and fees, customers go through and input their payment information. Billing information, credit card or debit card. Lastly, they'll check the box accepting the terms and conditions. As I said before, when the customer accepts the AIM EULA, they're also accepting our partners as well. Then they will press Start Free Trial. Once they do, they're going to receive a receipt. Since this is a free trial, it's not going to be for any money, but they'll receive it nonetheless. More importantly, they're going to have access to the customer portal. To access the customer portal, all they'll need to do is input their email, and a verification email will be sent in their inbox. Because their personal emails are password protected, there is no login credentials for each customer into the customer portal. They'll receive the email and click on the link. It will then directly take them into their account. When they come into the customer portal, this is where they'll manage their customer information, billing information, and their subscriptions. They can upgrade, downgrade, increase or decrease the number of licenses they have, or they can choose to cancel their subscriptions. Here, they're able to update their credit card, debit card, and their billing information. Lastly, we need to provide you information in real time. At AIM, we're currently building out our partner portal, but this is taking some time. The expected ETA for the general availability is going to be Q2 of 2025. But hey, you're a tech company. You know that things don't always go according to plan. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we have access to this data to you in real time. We leverage a handful of different applications, specifically Stripe, Zapier, and Google Workspace. Once the information comes into our Stripe, we've integrated it with Zapier. This will push this data directly into Google Sheets, where you'll be able to access information whenever you need to or want to. To work together, it's not complicated and only a handful of steps. You need to go through and do a sign-up form. It takes all of maybe 3, maybe 5 minutes to complete. Within the sign-up form, you'll provide us a point of contact at your company to work directly with AIM. Our channel account manager will reach out to them and send over another form to collect your product information for us to create your payment links. We're asking to receive this information as soon as possible, but no later than 7 days after sign-up. We'll then create the payment links and give your company access to them so you can immediately start using them. We will have an official onboarding process to go through and talk to your point of contact about how we work together and what we need from you. Then, once a month, we need to align commercially on what your commercial strategies are and if you have any updates to your products, any new products that need payment links, and or if you have any new discount codes. Lastly, we're going to go through and provide you with reporting and financial reconciliation. We'll talk more about this in depth in a minute. This slide is a little complicated, so bear with me. At AIM, we'll remit payment to you based on a bi-monthly basis, so every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we'll close the payment cycle and process payment for transactions during that payment cycle the following Monday. We will not do financial reconciliation in these payment cycles. The reason for this is 1, the chance for any discrepancy is very, very low. More importantly, we understand how important it is to our partners to have access to your cash flow as fast as humanly possible. By doing financial reconciliation, we would slow down the process of receiving payment by another 2 weeks. So based on the actual transactions we have in our Stripe account, we're going to remit the payment to you minus any fees like our service fee, as well as a $45 transfer fee. At the end of the month, we're going to close all monthly transactions. We will then send out a monthly reconciliation report to you. We'll send this by the 3rd day of each month, and we need you to confirm it by the 10th of each month. It's highly unlikely, but if there's any discrepancy in the numbers, we'll adjust the payment in the next billing cycle, which in this case would be payment cycle 4. Here we have the operations calendar. You can see that we're going to close the transactions at the end of the month. Again, on the 3rd day, we'll submit an invoice report to you, and then you confirm it by the 10th. On the 1st day of each month, we need to know if you need any new products for payment links, if you want to update any of your current products, or if you need any new discount codes. We'll close the payment cycles every 2 weeks, and we'll submit payment to you via international wire transfer. Per U.S. banking standards, it's 5 to 10 business days from wire transfer to receive the money. However, I transfer money quite a bit from the U.S. to Vietnam. Generally speaking, it takes about 1 to 2 business days. So while we're technically looking at 5 to 10 business days, theoretically from the day of transfer, you'll receive the money within 1 to 2 business days, so in this case, the 14th. Again, 2 weeks to close the next payment cycle, and then we'll submit payment. As I referenced in the beginning of this presentation, I'm going to give you some free advice in terms of how I would personally use this to support you and be able to make as much money as possible, especially as we're sprinting towards the end of the year. In order to do that, we need to talk a little bit about some business concepts so we're speaking the same language. Here we're looking at a specific use case, the one I keep talking about. From left to right, we've got the month, the actual revenues per month, the monthly contribution for the annual revenue, the monthly percentage of growth, the revenue targets, the percent to goal, and what's the delta or the difference between the target versus the actual. It's not that hard to look at the far left and say, things are going okay, right? Things are stable because more or less the revenue has stayed flat for the majority of the year. We're looking at 70 to 80,000 range every single month, and it's better than decreasing every month. The reality though, this is not good because in particular, this company is burning $80,000 a month. No company can afford to burn $80,000. At this time of year, every company is sitting down and going through the same exercise. How did 2024 go? What do we need to do better in 2025? Specifically for this company, the goal 1 year ago was to get fundraising. Here we can see on the target column what the revenue targets needed to be in order to accomplish that. Spoiler alert, they did not get fundraising. Because while the revenue was relatively flat, they weren't able to go through and build the use case to get fundraising. Worst, and more importantly, they continued to burn $80,000 a month. No VC will invest in that business model. If you look at their annual percent to goal, they're only sitting at 60% to goal. And there is no way they're going to make up that $565,000 in the month of December. What they need to do is make decisions right now on how to adjust and make up as much money as humanly possible. On the right, we have the Pareto principle, or better known as the 80-20 rule. I've been a sales leader for the last 24 years of my life. And on one hand, it's kind of easy to say, well, you take your revenue and how many sales reps you have, and that's the revenue per sales rep, right? Well, no, that's not true. At the end of the day, a very small percentage of the sales reps are driving the majority of the money. Generally speaking, 5 to 10% of your sales reps are probably doing, at the very minimum, 60% of your revenue every single month. You take your top sales performers and your higher mid-level performers, and that's well over 80% of your revenue. Usually, 70% of your sales team is probably not producing a lot of revenue. I'm not telling you to go through and completely change your business model. But what I am saying is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You have a lot of sales reps that are not going to go through and they're not producing at a high level. If you can find a way to enable them to sell more, then you can make the best of both worlds. As I said before, I've been in Vietnam for a long time, and I've worked with a lot of companies at the end of the year. I've gone through this January to December cycle a lot. A lot of companies I've met over the years, they tend to say the same thing. You know, this sounds really good. I really want to do this, but I'm going to wait until after that. The problem with that is that you and me, we're startup tech founders. We don't have the luxury of time. I always say that 2 months is a lifetime in a startup. The world doesn't stop moving. It keeps moving forward. Let's think about what this means to you. If nothing changes once we come into December, December is going to look an awfully lot like November, maybe a little bit more revenue. But there's this imaginary line when you go from December to January where the light switch turns off and everybody decides that they don't want to spend money. So revenue takes a decent hit in January. Once we get into February, revenue takes a huge hit and significantly drops. At the end of February, beginning of March, we start coming back into the office. The problem with that is that you don't have any sales pipeline going into March. So your sales team has nothing to close in March. You start rebuilding that sales pipeline in March. By the time they get to April, business is now back to usual, or at least compared to December. December, January, February, March, April. We're looking at 4, maybe 5 months before you start seeing any difference in your revenue. Startup founders, tech founders, we don't have 4 months to start getting revenue in the door. I'm not telling you to completely change your business model at the end of year. However, what I am saying, the definition of insanity, and that you need to change now, not March. I'll be the first to argue that fully adopting an automated monthly recurring revenue business model is absolutely in your company's best future interest. However, while we all wish we could make decisions for our long-term goals, we all live in the world of short-term needs, and those needs require us to change now. What I'm suggesting you do is that you take your top sales performers and you don't change them at all. If nothing else, empower them to sell more in the same way that you're currently selling by reallocating all your best leads to your best reps. When you take all your incoming leads and distribute them evenly across your sales reps, you're essentially wasting them with your lower performing reps. I'd give them all to your top performers. Then reallocate your team and split it up between top performers and bottom performers. Have your top performers continue to do business as usual, giving them better, more qualified leads. Have them chase as much money as humanly possible. But with the lower sales performers, they're not making you money anyway. The lower performers are probably about 70% of your team. They don't have the skill set to be able to close a lot of money. So give them something easier to close. It's a lot easier to say, hey, don't take my word for it. Buy now and cancel later, rather than trying to persuade a prospect to pay an annual fee for something they've never used before. Let's go back to the use case we're talking about before. In this use case, there are 15,000 leads, of which 4,000 are hot leads where people are asking to come on board and go into a paid subscription. But this company is only closing 400 of those leads. That's 3,600 that are not closing every single month. Let's do the math. 3,600 times 12 months, that's 43,200 leads. Imagine what kind of re-engagement campaign you could have by offering a promotion to these leads to come on board for an extended trial period. Give them a month. Heck, give them 2. While your lower performers won't be delivering revenue in December, let's face it, they weren't going to do that anyway. However, you can use this re-engagement campaign, close as many of these leads as possible in December, and get revenue flowing through in January and February, the exact months that are very difficult for you. If I were you, I would go through and pilot it this way now and close as much business as possible before you go off to THET. Go off to THET, have a great new year, come back, and sit down and look at the numbers and assess at that point. Is this a great path moving forward? How much of my company do I want to commit to using monthly recurring revenue? Do I want to have the entire company convert to do 100% because this is the best path moving forward? I previously piloted launching this a few months back because I wanted to know what the market was going to say and get the feedback in terms of adoption of this model. On one hand, the feedback was great. Almost every CEO I know has considered how to collect revenue in this way, and that's very positive. The reality, though, is that there are some questions or concerns for companies to be able to say yes and move forward. So over the last few months, I've been going through and adjusting the business model to be able to support my partners at a higher level and make it easier for them to say yes. Payment terms. Every company needs more money or faster access to that money. I had previously proposed a 30-day payment term, which generally speaking is the best payment term you're ever going to get. But I understand you need money sooner, not later. So I adjusted to a bi-monthly payment, or twice a month, and removed the reconciliation process to pay you faster. I then added monthly financial reconciliation at the end of the month so that in the off chance there's a small difference in payment, we can agree and pay the difference in the next payment cycle. Adoption of monthly recurring revenue in Vietnam. Some companies that I've met have given me this feedback. Kang, this sounds great, but I don't think Vietnam is ready to start doing monthly recurring revenue. To that I say, I just don't believe it, and it's not true. Let me ask you this. Do you have a Netflix account? Does your company use Google Workspace, Salesforce, MailChimp, or Jira? If so, you have already accepted using a monthly recurring revenue model. These are all American-based companies that charge monthly. Even if you have the money to pay annually, most companies prefer to pay monthly to reduce their monthly OPEX and increase their available cash on hand. For Vietnamese people who are considering using software for the first time, they are absolutely not wanting to pay for annual contracts for software that might help their businesses. They would much rather try it out with no obligation or commitment to keep it. US-based contract. I can certainly understand and empathize that most Vietnamese companies would rather use a Vietnamese-based contract. However, the vast majority of all Vietnamese software companies have their software listed on the Apple or Google Play stores. That means they've already accepted the US-based contracts. Both Apple's and Google's software distribution agreements are US-based and are governed by the laws of the United States, specifically the laws of California as they're California-based. Whether you're accepting Apple's or Google contracts or the AIM contract, it's essentially the same business model. So accepting their contract and accepting mine is essentially the same. The only difference, Apple and Google will charge you a 30% margin. I will not. Adopting the monthly recurring business model. Adopting a monthly recurring business model is tough to quickly change your model and convert immediately to a monthly recurring model. I'm not suggesting you do that right away. What I am suggesting is that you pilot it by leveraging your top sales performers to focus on your current business model and close as much money as you possibly can. Again, they're doing at least 80% of the revenue anyway. But adjust your low performers to launch the monthly recurring model. It's easier for them to close and will drive business during the THET months. Don't dive directly in the deep end of the swimming pool. You can start in the shallow end by piloting monthly recurring revenue before fully committing to adopting the monthly recurring model 100%. Automated workflows. And lastly, reporting in order to make this work. You need to see information right away. By leveraging applications like Zapier, I can automate my workflows and seamlessly integrate my system so I can give you the information right away. While it's going to take a bit of time to launch the partner portal, this allows us to immediately start impacting your business and revenues today. We've all done business for a long time. We know that revenue is not going to be good once we cross into December and January, and it's worse in January to February. Even if revenue is staying flat, we're still not growing, and we live in a world where we must grow. We live in a world where we have to get fundraising. We need to be able to scale and dominate in the market. The rest of the world does not sell software in the way that we do in Vietnam. To this point, you haven't been able to go through and sell software in a smart, scalable way. You can now by partnering with AIM. By adopting an automated monthly recurring revenue model, this enables you to be able to have healthier, more stable, and scalable revenue to thrive in your business and stop trying to survive. I want to take a moment and thank you again for taking the time to review our presentation with me, and I'm looking forward to earning your business and partnering and growing our businesses together.